The morning sun cast long shadows across Haven's Rest as Captain Nera walked through the peaceful streets of the colony. Children of the Altari played in the gardens, their soft blue skin glowing gently in the warm light. Market vendors called, out their daily greetings, selling fresh fruits and handmade crafts. It was a perfect day on their small world. Nera smiled as she watched an elderly Altari teaching young ones how to tend the healing flowers that grew only on their planet. The Altari had always been a peaceful people. They had no armies, no weapons of war. Their greatest achievements were in medicine and agriculture. They helped heal the sick and fed the hungry across many worlds. But today would be different. Today would change everything. The alarm started as a low hum in the communication center. Nera rushed to her post, her heart already racing. The technician, a young Altari named Kel, looked up with wide, frightened eyes. "Captain, we have multiple ships entering our system," Kel said, his voice shaking. "They're not responding to our welcome messages." Nera looked at the display screen. Dozens of dark ships moved toward their world like hungry wolves. The ships were massive, covered in weapons and armor. She had seen ships like these before in the old warning messages from the Galactic Council. "Vex Empire," she whispered. The name sent chills down her spine. The Vex were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Entire civilizations had vanished after meeting the Vex. And now, they were here. "Send out the evacuation signal," Nera ordered. "Get everyone to the underground shelters." But even as she gave the command, she knew it would not be enough. The Vex had weapons that could crack planets. Underground shelters would only delay the inevitable. The communication screen suddenly filled with the image of a massive Vex warrior. His skin was dark gray, covered in battle scars. His eyes glowed red like burning coals. This was War Commander Vask, one of the Vex Empire's most feared leaders. "People of Haven's Rest," Vask spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "I am War Commander Vask of the Vex Third Fleet. Your world now belongs to the Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Resist and we will turn your planet to ash." The screen went dark. Nera stood in silence for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. 72 hours. 3 days to live. "Captain," Kel said quietly. "What do we do?" Nera looked around the communication center. Her people were looking at her with hope in their eyes. They believed she would find a solution. But what could she do? The Altari had no warships, no soldiers, no weapons that could fight the Vex. They were healers and farmers, not warriors. "Send out a distress call," she said finally. "Send it to everyone. The Galactic Council, the Kelton Republic, the Drex, Coalition, the Ethereal Conclave. Send it to every world that has communication equipment." "Captain, do you think they will help us?" asked Kel. Nera did not answer immediately. She knew the truth, but she could not say it out loud. The major powers of the galaxy would calculate the cost of fighting the Vex. They would decide that one small colony was not worth starting a war, but she had to try. "Just send the message," she said. Kel began typing the distress call. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel, but Nera could see his hands shaking. She put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Make it simple," she told him. "Tell them who we are. Tell them we need help. Tell them we have 3 days." The message went out across the galaxy at light speed. It carried the desperate plea of a peaceful people facing extinction. But as the hours passed, the responses began to come back. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy declined to help. The Kelton Republic sent a formal message. "We deeply regret the situation on Haven's Rest, but the Kelton Republic cannot commit military forces against the Vex Empire at this time." The Drex Coalition was more direct. "Military intervention would result in massive casualties. We cannot justify the cost." The Ethereal Conclave sent philosophers instead of soldiers. "We will remember your people in our meditations." Each rejection felt like a knife in Nera's heart. She watched her people prepare for the end. Families gathered together. Parents held their children close. The elderly shared stories of better times. On the second day, Nira made one final recording. She stood in front of the camera, trying to be strong for her people. Behind her, she could see the Vex ships getting closer. To anyone who might hear this message, she began, "My name is Captain Nira of Haven's Rest. We are the Altari people. For generations, we have helped heal the sick across the galaxy. We have fed the hungry and cared for the wounded. We have never raised weapons against anyone." She paused, looking out the window at her beautiful world. "In one day, the Vex Empire will destroy us. We have no weapons to fight them. We have no armies to defend ourselves. Our great warships are hospital ships and cargo vessels filled with medical supplies." Tears began to fall down her blue cheeks, but she continued, "We do not expect rescue. The great powers of the galaxy have made their choice. But perhaps someone will remember us. Perhaps someone will know that we tried to make the galaxy a little better." She took a deep breath. "If anyone hears this, please remember the Altari. Remember that we lived. Remember that we loved. Remember that when we called for help, we hoped someone would answer." The message ended. Nira sat back in her chair, feeling empty. Outside, the Vex fleet continued its approach. War Commander Vask had made his intentions clear. There would be no mercy, no second chances. But Nira's message did not stop at the usual boundaries. The emergency transmission was boosted by ancient relay stations, pushed further and further into the outer regions of the galaxy. It traveled to places where the great civilizations rarely looked. It traveled to a small blue planet on the galaxy's edge, a world that most considered primitive and unimportant. A world called Earth. On Earth, deep space monitoring stations picked up the faint signal. The message was translated and sent to military command centers. Within hours, it reached the desk of Admiral Kane, commander of Earth's deep space fleet. Kane read the message twice. Then he called an emergency meeting. The Altari had asked for help. Someone had finally heard their call, but they did not know that yet. On Haven's Rest, Captain Nira prepared her people for the end, believing that no one would come. She was about to be very, very wrong. Admiral Kane sat in his office at Earth's Deep Space Command, reading the translated message for the third time. The words seemed to burn on the screen before him. A peaceful species was about to be wiped out, and nobody in the galaxy cared enough to help. Kane was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years protecting Earth and its colonies. He had seen wars, disasters, and tragedies. But something about this message hit him differently. Maybe it was the simple honesty in Captain Nira's words. Maybe it was the fact that the Altari had helped heal people across the galaxy, only to be abandoned when they needed help. "Sir?" Lieutenant Davis knocked on his door. "The emergency council meeting is ready." Kane nodded and walked to the main conference room. Around the long table sat Earth's top military leaders. General Brooks, the head of Earth's ground forces, was already studying tactical displays. Ambassador Torres from the diplomatic corps looked worried. Captain Reed, the youngest fleet commander, sat quietly in the corner. "Gentlemen, ladies," Kane began, "you've all read the distress call from Haven's Rest. The Altari have less than 18 hours before the Vex Empire destroys their world. I want to hear your thoughts." General Brooks spoke first. "Admiral, with respect, this isn't our fight. The Altari are 3,000 light-years away. Even our fastest ships would take 4 days to reach them. By the time we arrive, it will be over." Ambassador Torres nodded. "The general is right about the distance, but there's more to consider. Earth has no formal alliance with the Altari. We've never even had direct contact with them. Getting involved could make the Vex Empire our enemy." Kane looked around the table. These were good people, smart people. Their concerns were logical. "What about you, Captain Reed? You've been quiet." Captain Reed was only 35 years old, the youngest person ever to command an Earth fleet. He stood up slowly, his blue eyes serious. "Admiral, I've been thinking about my daughter. She's 8 years old. Yesterday she asked me why I became a soldier. I told her it was to protect people who couldn't protect themselves." Reed walked to the display screen showing the Altari message. "These people heal the sick. They feed the hungry. They've never hurt anyone, and when they're about to die, they don't even ask us to save them. They just hope someone will remember them. The room fell silent. Reed continued. The general is right. We might not get there in time. The ambassador is right. This could make us enemies with the Vex, but they called for help. That should be enough. Kane felt something stir in his chest. Pride, maybe? Or hope? What exactly are you suggesting, Captain? I'm suggesting we do what humans do best, Reed said. We try anyway, even when the odds are against us, even when it seems impossible. We try. General Brooks shook his head. Captain, you're talking about sending our entire fleet on a mission that might be hopeless. We could lose everything. We could, Reed agreed. But if we don't try, we definitely lose something else. We lose who we are. Kane stood up and walked to the large window overlooking Earth's orbital shipyards. Dozens of ships floated in space. Warships, cargo vessels, exploration craft. Each one represented years of human work and dreams. Admiral, Ambassador Torres said quietly, what if we send a diplomatic message instead? We could condemn the Vex actions, maybe organize economic sanctions. Kane turned back to face the group. Would that save the Altari? Torres looked down. No, sir. Probably not. Kane made his decision. We launch everything we have. Every ship that can fly. Every crew member who volunteers. We leave in 6 hours. The room erupted in voices. General Brooks stood up. Admiral, this is madness. We're talking about Earth's entire deep space fleet. Yes, Kane said calmly. That's exactly what we're talking about. Captain Reed stepped forward. Sir, I volunteer to lead the advanced ships. If we push our engines beyond safe limits, we might be able to get there before the deadline. Kane nodded. How many ships can you take? 12 of our fastest vessels. We'll need to strip out everything non-essential and overload the engines. It's dangerous but possible. Do it, Kane ordered. General, I need you to coordinate the main fleet. Every ship we can spare follows Captain Reed. Ambassador Torres, send a message to the Altari. Tell them help is coming. Torres looked shocked. What should I tell them exactly? Kane thought for a moment. Tell them that Earth received their message. Tell them that humanity is coming. Within an hour, Earth's military bases became hives of activity. Engineers worked frantically to prepare ships for the longest emergency deployment in human history. Cargo vessels were fitted with weapon systems. Exploration ships had their laboratories converted to ammunition storage. Hospital ships prepared for casualties. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endeavour. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. His navigator, Lieutenant Park, looked up from her calculations. Captain, I've plotted the fastest course. We'll need to push the engines to 110% capacity for the entire journey. The other ship captains are asking if you're sure about this. Reed activated the communication system that connected him to all 12 ships in his advance fleet. This is Captain Reed. In a few minutes, we're going to attempt something that our engineers say is impossible. We're going to cross 3,000 light years in 18 hours. Our engines weren't designed for this. We might not all make it. He paused, looking out at the stars. But right now, there are peaceful people waiting to die. They've given up hope because nobody answered their call for help. I say we show them what humans do when somebody needs help. The responses came back immediately. Every ship confirmed they were ready. Every captain volunteered to push their engines to the breaking point. Reed smiled. Then let's go save some lives. The 12 ships jumped to hyperspace, their engines glowing brighter than ever before. Behind them, Admiral Kane coordinated the launch of Earth's main fleet. Over 200 vessels prepared for departure. In the communication center, Ambassador Torres sent a simple message toward Haven's Rest. To Captain Nira and the people of Haven's Rest, this is Earth, help is coming, hold on. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched Earth's massive fleet deployment with confusion. The Kelton Republic's intelligence service reported to their leaders. The humans are moving their entire fleet toward Haven's Rest. We don't understand why. The Drex Coalition's military analysts were equally puzzled. Earth has no strategic interest in that system. This makes no tactical sense. But on Earth, The decision made perfect sense. A peaceful people had asked for help. The powerful had turned away. But humanity had heard the call. As Captain Reed's ships raced through hyperspace, pushing their engines beyond all safety limits, Reed thought about his daughter's question. Why did he become a soldier? Now he knew the answer. He became a soldier so that when someone like Captain Nira called for help, someone would answer. The Altari thought no one would come. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Captain Reed's eyes burned as he stared at the navigation display. The Endeavor shook violently around him. Warning lights flashed red across every console. His chief engineer had told him 3 times that the engines couldn't take much more. How much longer? Reed asked Lieutenant Park. 2 hours, sir, she replied, gripping her console as another wave of turbulence hit the ship. But the Falcon is reporting engine problems. The Phoenix has lost power to 2 of her main drives. Reed looked at the tactical display. Of his 12 ships, only 8 were still keeping pace. 4 had fallen behind with mechanical failures. He had started this desperate race with 12 ships. Now he might arrive with only 8. But he would arrive. The Altari deadline was in 3 hours. Captain, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Haven's Rest. Put it through. Captain Nira's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired and sad, but she was trying to smile. Unknown ships, this is Captain Nira of Haven's Rest. We detect your approach, but you should not come here. The Vex fleet has over 300 ships. You will be destroyed. Reed activated the return signal. Captain Nira, this is Captain Reed, of the Earth vessel Endeavor. We received your message. We're here to help. Nira's eyes went wide. Earth? But you're so far away. How did you get here so fast? We pushed our engines harder than we probably should have, Reed said with a small smile. Ma'am, we need you to move your people to the safest shelters you have. Things are about to get very interesting. On Haven's Rest, Nira couldn't believe what she was seeing. 8 small ships were approaching her world, moving faster than anything she had ever seen. They were tiny compared to the massive Vex fleet, but they were here. Someone had actually come. She activated the colony-wide communication system. People of Haven's Rest, this is Captain Nira. Ships from Earth have arrived to help us. I repeat, ships from Earth are here. Across the colony, Altari families looked up from their hiding places. Children asked their parents who the humans were. Parents tried to explain, but many had never heard of Earth. In space above the planet, War Commander Vask watched the approaching human ships with amusement. 8 small vessels against his fleet of 300. It was almost insulting. Open a channel to the human ships, he ordered. Reed's face appeared on Vask's main screen. The human looked young and determined. Vask had seen that look before. It usually disappeared quickly when faced with overwhelming force. Human, Vask said in his grinding voice. I am War Commander Vask of the Vex 3rd Fleet. You are outnumbered 37-1. Your ships are small and weak. Leave now, and I will give you quick deaths. Reed looked directly at Vask without flinching. War Commander, I think you miscounted. You're not facing 8 ships. You're facing humanity, and we don't negotiate with bullies. Vask laughed, a sound like metal scraping stone. Humanity? Your entire species sent 8 ships? For now, Reed said calmly. But we're just the beginning. The transmission ended. Vask shook his head. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Either way, they would be dead soon. Reed turned to his crew. All ships, battle formation. We need to buy time and show these Vex that humans don't back down. The 8 human ships moved into attack position. They were fast and agile, but they looked like insects next to the massive Vex dreadnoughts. The battle began when Reed gave the order to fire. Human weapons lit up the darkness of space. The shots hit several Vex ships, causing minor damage. Vask was impressed despite himself. The humans were accurate shots, but accuracy wouldn't save them. All ships return fire, Vask commanded. The space around the human fleet exploded with enemy fire. Reed's ships scattered like leaves in a storm, moving in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully planned. They're trying to surround us, Lieutenant Park reported. Good, Reed said. That means they're not shooting at the planet. All ships, evasive pattern Delta, use the asteroid field. The human ships dove toward a nearby asteroid field. The massive Vex ships were too big to follow easily, but they kept firing. Several asteroids exploded as missed shots hit them. Reed's ship, the Endeavour, took a direct hit to its port side. The lights flickered and smoke filled the bridge. Damage report, Reed called out. Port weapons are down, sir. Hull breach on deck 3. But we're still flying. Reed smiled grimly. Then we keep fighting. The battle continued for an hour. The human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking at the edges of the Vex formation and then disappearing behind asteroids. They were like mosquitoes attacking a giant, but they were persistent mosquitoes. 2 human ships were destroyed. The Alais Falcon exploded when its damaged engines overloaded. The Phoenix was cut in half by a Vex beam weapon. But the remaining 6 ships kept fighting. On Haven's Rest, the Altari watched the battle in amazement. The tiny human fleet was actually holding off the mighty Vex Empire. It seemed impossible, but it was happening. Captain Nira, young Kel said, the humans are fighting for us, people they've never met. Nira wiped tears from her eyes. Yes, Kel, they came when no one else would. In space, War Commander Vask was getting frustrated. These humans should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, they kept fighting with a stubbornness he had never encountered. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we've lost 7 ships to their attacks. The humans are using unconventional tactics, Vask growled. 7 ships wasn't much out of 300, but it was more than he had expected to lose to such a small force. Concentrate all fire on the lead ship, he ordered. And this. Over 50 Vex ships turned their weapons toward Reed's Endeavour. The space around the human flagship became a storm of deadly energy. Reed knew his ship couldn't survive such concentrated fire, but just as he prepared to give the order to abandon ship, something impossible happened. His long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. Lots of them. Lieutenant Park looked up from her console, her face showing wonder and disbelief. Captain, I'm reading over 200 ships approaching at high speed. They're human ships, sir. Reed felt his heart leap. Admiral Kane? The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Kane's voice filled the bridge. Captain Reed, this is Admiral Kane. Sorry we're late. We had to make a few stops to pick up some friends. On the main screen, Reed watched as the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled dropped out of hyperspace. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and even converted cargo ships. They came in formation, their weapons already charging. War Commander. Vask stared at his tactical display in shock. Where there had been 8 small human ships, there were now over 200 vessels of various sizes. How many humans are there? He whispered. His tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, according to our intelligence, this appears to be Earth's entire deep space fleet. Vask felt something he had rarely experienced in his long military career. Fear. The humans had crossed thousands of light years to help people they had never met. They had committed their entire fleet to save one small colony. What kind of species did that? Admiral Kane's voice echoed across all communication channels. War Commander Vask, this is Admiral Kane of the Earth Fleet. You have threatened innocent people. You will withdraw immediately, or we will remove you. Vask looked at his fleet of 300 ships, then at the human fleet of just over 200. He still had numerical superiority, but something told him that numbers might not matter with these humans. He was about to find out just how right he was. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Titan, watching the Vex fleet spread out before him. 300 enemy ships against his 212. The numbers were close, but Kane had learned long ago that battles weren't won by counting ships. All ships battle formation, Kane ordered. Captain Reed, pull your damaged ships back. You've done enough for now. Reed's voice came through the communication system, tired but determined. With respect, sir, the Endeavour can still fight. Indy smiled. That was exactly what he expected Reed to say. Very well, Captain. Stay close to the Titan. We'll need your experience with Vex tactics. War Commander Vask watched the human fleet arrange itself into attack formation. He had fought many battles against many species. The Kelton ships were fast but fragile. The Drex ships were heavily armored but slow. The ethereal ships relied on advanced technology but avoided close combat. But these human ships were different. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some were clearly warships built for battle. Others looked like they had been cargo ships or exploration vessels hastily fitted with weapons. Some were so small they could barely be called ships at all. What kind of fleet is this? Vask muttered. His tactical officer studied the readings. Sir, many of these ships appear to be civilian vessels. They've been converted for combat, but they're not proper warships. Vask felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had been so desperate to help the Altari that they had converted their entire civilian fleet into a war fleet. What kind of species did that? Admiral Kane's voice echoed. Across space. War Commander Vask, this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces and leave this system immediately. Vask activated his own communication system. Admiral Kane, you are brave but foolish. Your fleet may be large, but many of your ships are weak. We are the Vex Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. You cannot defeat us. Kane's response was calm and cold. War Commander, you made a mistake when you threatened innocent people. You made a bigger mistake when you didn't leave when I asked nicely. Now we do this the hard way. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of weapons fire. The space between the two fleets lit up like a lightning storm. Vex energy beams met human missiles and laser fire in a deadly dance. The first thing Vask noticed was that the humans didn't fight like other species. When Kelton ships took damage, they retreated to repair. When Drex ships were outnumbered, they called for reinforcements. When ethereal ships faced superior force, they withdrew to fight another day. But the humans did something completely different. When their ships took damage, they kept fighting. When they were outnumbered, they charged forward. When they faced certain destruction, they fought harder. A converted human cargo ship called the Iron Will was surrounded by 3 Vex destroyers. Instead of trying to escape, it rammed the largest enemy ship while firing all its weapons. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Another human vessel, the small patrol ship Courage, had its engines destroyed and was drifting helplessly. When 2 Vex ships moved in for the kill, the Courage used its emergency thrusters to collide with one of them. The explosion damaged both Vex ships enough that other human vessels could finish them off. Sir, Vask's tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. The humans are using ramming attacks. They're destroying themselves to damage our ships. Vask stared at his tactical display in growing horror. He had never seen anything like this. The humans were treating their own lives as weapons. They would sacrifice themselves without hesitation if it meant protecting others. On the Titan, Admiral Kane coordinated the battle with calm efficiency. Group Alpha, focus fire on their command ship. Group Beta, protect the damaged vessels. Group Gamma, watch for flanking maneuvers. Captain Reed's Endeavour stayed close to the flagship, its weapons still firing despite heavy damage. Admiral, the Vex are trying to break through our left flank. I see it, Kane replied. All ships, execute Formation 7. The human fleet moved like a living thing, ships repositioning themselves to cover weaknesses and exploit opportunities. It wasn't the most advanced formation Kane had ever seen, but it was effective because every captain knew that the others would never abandon them. The battle raged for 2 hours. Ships from both sides were destroyed, but something strange was happening. The Vex fleet, despite its superior numbers and firepower, was slowly being pushed back. Vask couldn't understand. His ships were stronger, his weapons more powerful, his crews more experienced. But the humans kept fighting with an intensity that defied logic. Sir, his communication officer called out, we're receiving surrender requests from the Vex ships. The Hammer is requesting permission to withdraw. The destroyer-class ship Vengeance is reporting critical damage and asking to retreat. Vask was shocked. Vex ships never asked to retreat. They fought until they were destroyed. But now, faced with an enemy that seemed to welcome death in battle, his crews were losing their will to fight. On the other side, The human ships continued their relentless assault. Even the smallest vessels fought like they were the size of battleships. A human medical ship called the Mercy had been converted into a combat vessel. When it was surrounded by enemy fighters, it used its medical scanners to target weak points. In enemy ships with surgical precision, Admiral Kane watched his fleet fight with pride. These were not just soldiers. They were people who had volunteered to cross the galaxy to help strangers. Teachers, engineers, doctors, farmers, all fighting like seasoned warriors because they believed in doing what was right. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "The Vex fleet is beginning to pull back. We've destroyed or disabled over 90 enemy ships." Kane nodded. "Signal all ships. Maintain pressure but don't pursue beyond the system boundary. Our goal is to protect Haven's Rest, not to chase the Vex across the galaxy." War Commander Vask found himself in a position he had never experienced before. He was losing a battle. Not just losing, but being completely outfought by an enemy that should have been easy to defeat. His flagship, the Dominator, shuddered under repeated human attacks. 3 human ships were focusing their fire on his vessel, and his shields were failing. "Sir," his tactical officer said urgently, "recommend immediate withdrawal. We've lost over a third of our fleet." Vask looked at the battle display one more time. The humans were winning not because they had better ships or superior tactics, but because they refused to give up. They fought like every battle was personal, like they were defending their own families. "All ships," Vask ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Withdraw to the edge of the system. We will regroup and assess our options." As the Vex fleet began its retreat, cheers erupted on human ships across the battle zone. On Haven's Rest, the Altari watched in amazement as their saviors drove off the mighty Vex Empire. Captain Nira activated her communication system. "Admiral Kane, Captain Reed, all human ships, we cannot find words to thank you. You came when no one else would. You fought against impossible odds. You saved us." Kane's voice came back, warm and tired. "Captain Nira, we're just glad we got here in time. Nobody should face extinction alone." But even as the humans celebrated their victory, War Commander Vask was sending a message to the Vex High Command. His words would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. "Do not underestimate the humans. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They value the lives of strangers as much as their own lives. They will sacrifice everything to protect the innocent. We have awakened something in the galaxy that we do not understand." The message would reach the Vex capital in days, but its effects would be felt across the galaxy for generations to come. 3 days after the battle at Haven's Rest, the galaxy was buzzing with news that nobody could believe. The mighty Vex Empire had retreated. Not just retreated, they had been defeated by a species most civilizations had never heard of. On the capital world of the Keltan Republic, Supreme Chancellor Vera paced around her office, reading report after report. Her military advisors sat quietly at the conference table, afraid to speak. "How did we miss this?" she finally asked. "Earth has been building a fleet for decades, and we dismissed them as simple explorers and traders." General Tusk, the Republic's top military commander, cleared his throat nervously. "Chancellor, our intelligence reports showed that Earth had only peaceful contact with other species. They seemed interested in science and trade, not war." "Well, they certainly know how to fight now," Vera said, throwing the reports on the table. "They sent their entire fleet to save people they had never met. What kind of species does that?" The room fell silent. Nobody had an answer. Meanwhile, on the war world of the Drex Coalition, War Master Grick studied battle recordings from Haven's Rest. He watched the same scenes over and over, trying to understand what he was seeing. "These tactics make no sense," he muttered to his aide. "Their ships ram enemy vessels. They sacrifice themselves without orders. This is not how civilized warfare works." His aide, a young Drex officer named Tak, looked up from his own analysis. "War Master, perhaps that is why they won. The Vex expected civilized warfare. The humans gave them something else." Grick nodded slowly. "Send a message to all coalition commanders. We need to study these humans carefully. They may have changed the rules of war. Far away, in the crystal towers of the ethereal conclave, high, Sage Lumina meditated on the implications of humanity's actions. The ethereals were the oldest and wisest species in the galaxy, but even they were confused by what had happened. I have searched through 10,000 years of history, Lumina told her council. Never have I found a species that would risk everything for strangers. The humans crossed thousands of light years to help people they did not know. This is unprecedented. Elder Sage Christos, ancient even by ethereal standards, spoke in a voice like wind through crystal caves. Perhaps we have made an error, Lumina. We judged humanity by their technology and ignored their spirit. They may be more advanced than we realized, just not in ways we expected. Back at Haven's Rest, the cleanup was nearly complete. The Altari had buried their dead and begun rebuilding what the battle had damaged. But the real changes were happening, in their hearts. Children who had never seen violence now played games where they were brave human captains. Adults who had never raised a weapon in anger now talked about learning to defend themselves. The peaceful Altari were still peaceful, but they were no longer helpless. Captain Nira stood in the colony's main square, watching workers install a new monument. It was simple but beautiful, a crystal sculpture showing human and Altari hands reaching toward each other across the stars. What will the inscription say? Asked Kel, who had been promoted to communications chief after his brave work during the crisis. Nira smiled as she read the words carved into the crystal base. When the galaxy turned away, when the powerful chose silence, when hope seemed lost, humanity came. They traveled farther than seemed possible, fought against odds that seemed impossible, and saved a people they had never met. On Earth, Admiral Kane sat in his office, reading messages from across the galaxy. Some were requests for alliance. Others were subtle threats disguised as diplomatic inquiries. All of them showed that the galaxy now saw humanity differently. Captain Reed knocked on his door. "Admiral, you wanted to see me?" Kane gestured to a chair. Reed still looked tired from the battle, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "Captain, I'm forming a new division of the fleet. I want to call it the Galactic Response Fleet. When someone calls for help, we answer. No politics, no strategic calculations, no debates about cost and benefit. Someone needs help, we go. Are you interested in commanding it?" Reed's face lit up with the biggest smile Kane had seen in years. "Yes, sir. Absolutely yes, sir." Kane handed him a data pad with fleet assignments. "Good. Because we just received another distress call. A Kelton research station is under attack by raiders. They're asking for help." Reed looked at the data and laughed. "The same Kelton Republic that wouldn't help the Altari?" "The very same," Kane confirmed. "Ironic, isn't it?" Reed stood up, his expression becoming serious. "When do we leave, sir?" "In 2 hours." "And Captain?" "The Kelton request specifically asked for human assistance. It seems our reputation is spreading." As Reed left to prepare his ships, Kane looked out his window at Earth's orbital shipyards. They were busier than ever, building new vessels to replace those lost at Haven's Rest. But more importantly, they were building ships designed for rescue and protection, not conquest. Across the galaxy, other species were also building ships. But their motivations were different. Some built warships because they feared human power. Others built alliance vessels because they wanted human friendship. A few built exploration ships because they wanted to understand what made humans different. War Commander Vask, meanwhile, had arrived at the Vex capital world in disgrace. He stood before the High Command explaining his defeat against impossible odds. "The humans do not fight for territory or resources," he reported. "They fight for ideas, for justice, for people they have never met. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous." Supreme Warlord Drex, the ultimate commander of all Vex forces, listened carefully. "What do you recommend, War Commander?" Vask took a deep breath. "Avoid conflict with humanity at all costs. If we must fight them, expect heavy casualties. They will not surrender when outnumbered. They will not retreat when damaged. They will fight until they win or until they are all dead." The Vex High Command voted unanimously to avoid human space. But the most important changes were happening in small places, on distant worlds where ordinary people heard the story of Haven's Rest. On a farming planet in Kelton space, a young girl asked her father why the humans had helped the Altari. Because it was the right thing to do, her father answered. But the Altari couldn't pay them back, the girl said. They couldn't offer the humans anything valuable. Her father thought for a moment. Maybe that's exactly why the humans helped them. Maybe helping people who can't help you back is the most valuable thing of all. On a trading station near Drek Space, an old merchant told the story to anyone who would listen. The humans could have stayed home, safe and comfortable. Instead, they risked everything for strangers. That's the kind of neighbors I want to have. And in the halls of the ethereal conclave, philosophers debated a new question. If wisdom meant understanding the universe, and the universe contained species like humanity, then perhaps the wisest course was to learn from them. 6 months after the Battle of Haven's Rest, Captain Reed received a message from his daughter back on Earth. She was 9 years old now, and she had written him a letter. "Dear Daddy," it said, "my teacher told us about the Altari and how you saved them. She said you're a hero. I always knew you were a hero, but now everyone else knows too. I'm proud of you. When I grow up, I want to be just like you and help people who need it." Reed smiled as he read the letter. Around him, his crew prepared for another rescue mission. In the past 6 months, the Galactic Response Fleet had answered 12 distress calls. They had saved colonies from pirates, helped evacuate planets threatened by natural disasters, and provided medical aid to plague-stricken worlds. Each time, the pattern was the same. The local powers would debate and calculate and find reasons not to help, and each time humanity would answer the call. The galaxy was learning a new truth. When someone called for help, someone would answer. That someone was humanity. And slowly, other species began to follow their example. The universe was becoming a little bit kinder, a little bit braver, and a little bit more hopeful, all because one peaceful species had called for help, and another species had decided that was reason enough to cross the galaxy.